Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Steelers Preview, brought to you by the Beehive. Gentlemen's Club, Latrobe, Pennsylvania. Make sure you visit the Beehive and ask for the Dave Schofield special. You'll find out what that is when you get there. All right, joining us.
An extra sturdy chair.
Could be the lunch special. We don't know. Bryan Anthony Davis, our podcast producer. What's going on, Bryan? How are you?
Oh, I'm all abuzz tonight and feeling good.
Dave Schofield, what's up?
Bryan took my line.
Oh, really?
Took my line. I'm
all right. We're gonna try to keep that stuff to part two. We said that in this month of not having as much to talk about, not a lot of news, we were gonna do the fun stuff in part two. So we'll try to keep the Beehive commentary to a minimum. I can't say it's not going to be talked about, but it'll be at a minimum. All right. The only news that talked about today was that the Steelers signed a backup kicker. I view this as a Matthew Wright type signing. They need an extra leg in camp. You want to have someone that's familiar with the system in case Chris Boswell gets hurt. Before we talk about this, Dave, my question is, did the NFL, or Bryan, maybe you know this, I shouldn't assume that it's just Dave. Did the NFL say that they're going to have expanded practice squad rosters again in 2021?
It's not official, but from anything that I've heard, but it was the discussion and both sides want it. So it's pretty much going to happen. Yeah. I don't know that they've made the official announcement about anything.
So then that makes sense that the Steelers would have another kicker on the roster. They could keep that kicker on the practice squad in case of an injury, and they could promote him if they had to. That's what they did last year, but we'll see. We'll see. Bryan, thoughts on the kicker being signed? And it's Sloman. What's his first name? I forget.
Stan?
I'll look it up.
It's me, Stan. I don't know what his name is. Here's
Sam Sloman.
Sam. I was close. Sam.
Sam Malone.
That was almost my radio. Brian Malone was almost my radio name back in 1990 because of Sam Malone. So, but then it became something different. Yeah. So, first of all, when we're talking about the practice squads, if that happens, it's a win-win for both sides. Dave said both sides won it. I think that's fantastic because being able to protect these guys, even if you protected 4 last year, that might go down a little bit. But even if it does, if you could protect 2, that's still a pretty good deal for you to be able to do that each and every week. Make sure somebody doesn't fly the coop. That's, I kind of like it that way. It's a win. It gives more guys opportunities to make it in this league as well. So I would love to see them do that. We saw it last year with the punter. I mean, Corliss Waitman was on this team all year long as a practice squad player. And he had a job. He would have not normally had a job. But bringing in Sam Sloman, what it does is it gives Chris Boswell a chance to relax during camp. Still be on guard, but relax. And, you don't have to put all the wear and tear on him. Give a kid a chance to not just stick with your team on the practice squad, but go the route of auditioning for 31 other clubs. If you have a nice preseason, then you get a job elsewhere.
Yeah. Let's think about this. Put it this way. Think about the past 2 times the Steelers have had part-time kickers in some capacity in the regular season. Randy Bullock and then Matthew Wright last season. Both of them became kickers now. The Bengals did draft a kicker, so Bullock's going to be looking for work. But still, Matthew Wright, it was the Detroit Lions, am I right, Dave, that picked him up and gave him a contract and see if he can kick for them. I don't think he's made the team yet, but still, Dave.
I have no idea.
Yeah. That was one of those off-season moves, like right after the season ended. Their players are going to reserve contracts and stuff, future deals. Anyways, Dave, what are your thoughts on the new kicker? Anything?
Well, that's what I brought up in our Slack channel about that. This has nothing to do with Chris Boswell and competition there. This is all about making him not get overworked through training camp with practices, preseason games, and everything, which does allow somebody else to showcase what they can do. It's not a controversy, anything. You're like, well, then why would someone want to do that if they don't really have a chance to make the team? You're having a chance to show what you can do because they don't want to overwork Boswell. End of story. And you are correct, Matt. You're right. It was with the Detroit Lions.
Okay, very good. All right, so enough kicker talk. We are going to talk about something which I'm actually excited to talk about because for some reason, coming into this draft, the 2021 NFL draft, I just wasn't that excited about it. I don't know why it was. Maybe I was just kind of thinking that the Steelers with the salary cap decreasing, but I have really come to have high hopes for this draft class. And even as the draft was going on, you're thinking, well, this player might be good a few years down the road, but how many of these players are going to be an impact player this season? And so that's kind of the crux of where we came up with today's podcast, and today's topic is we want to rank the rookies in order of importance, not for the future, but for 2021. So all three of us, we have the list of the 9 rookies, and we rank them
Drafted rookies.
Drafted rookies, correct. We're going to talk about undrafted rookies separately. But the drafted rookies 1 through 9, we ranked 1 being the most important, 9 being the least. We're going to go from least to the most important. And I think that some might sit there and say, well, this is going to be it. And everyone knows who number 1 is going to be. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Before we get started, let me refresh everyone's memory of the 9 draft picks in order. First round pick, Najee Harris. Second round pick, Pat Freiermuth. Third round pick, Kendrick Green. And then 2 fourth-round picks, Dan Moore Jr. and Buddy Johnson. 5th round pick, Isaiah Loudermilk. 6th round pick, Quincy Roche, Q from the U. 2 7th-round picks, Trey Norwood and Presley Harvin III. Okay, so we're going to do this we're going to go around the horn, and we're going to do from what we feel is the least important for this season. Again, I can't stress this enough. This season, we might be saying that this player could be great in 2 years. We're not talking about 2 years. We're talking about this season. So let's start. We'll go Brian, Dave, and then I'll chime in as well. That'll be the order that we go. And so, Brian, you go first. Who's number 9, the least important of this draft class, in your opinion, for 2021?
You gotta unmute.
You aren't a professional. I've got idiot dogs barking in the background, and they're like 3 down. So I was just trying to not have that. So thanks for reminding me of my professionalism. I appreciate it. As we're all going to talk about a strip club in the second half of the show. So this is something that I've changed just at the last second here. And it's a guy that I am super excited about as a draft pick for the Steelers. But I don't think that he is going to have much to do with 2021. And it's Dan Moore Jr. I love the pick. I love the idea of having him here. I just don't think that he is going to be needed to be called upon, and you kind of hope that he's not needed to be called upon in 2021. So I'm going to go ahead and say the 4A pick from Texas A&M, Dan Moore Jr., is the guy at my number 9, but it does not diminish how excited I am about this guy.
Okay. Dave, who's your number 9?
I almost left my mic on mute just to do it. No, my number 9, and I'll give you the reasons as we go. But my number 9, I went with Trey Norwood specifically because of this year, and it's not just because it's him, because they have a lot of young guys, also through the undrafted free agents that we'll talk about eventually, that could be in the mix to kind of maybe be a sub package guy to fill in for the Steelers. I don't know that he has to be that guy this year. He could be a guy that is just around. He's a 7th round pick as a defensive back. You know, one of these guys might not even make the team, because last year, still, even though it was the first time every drafted rookie played for the Steelers in their rookie season, they all still didn't make the 53-man squad to start. So, and the thing is with Norwood, there's a lot of guys in competition there at the end. So that's why I put him in that position.
Okay. So Brian said Dan Moore Jr. You're saying Trey Norwood. I'm going with the number 1 pick that was like, what? Isaiah Loudermilk. You think about the fact that he's been touted as a project. He's at a position that is the deepest position on the team, arguably, at least on the defensive side of the ball. I think we all assume he's going to make the team, but at the same time, I don't think he gets a helmet unless there's a bunch of injuries. So I'm going to say Isaiah Loudermilk for me is number 9, the least important to this team in 2021. Now, I could see him developing into something that is a very serviceable defensive lineman, just not this year. All right, Brian, what about number 8? Who you got?
So this was my original number 9, and it's Dave's number 9. It is Trey Norwood. I really think that you're going to see him. And the reason I elevated him above Dan Moore is I think you're going to see more of Trey Norwood trying to break in on special teams. And if he does get some action, it could be the special team route. I go back to guys from years past, and I remember a rookie from 1995, Lathon Flowers, who ended up being a pretty good player for that team, but he was special on special teams in that 1995 Super Bowl season in which they were the runner-up to the Dallas Cowboys. So I'm gonna follow that and say if Norwood does something on special teams, he could make an impact. So let's go ahead and put him at number 8.
All right, Dave Schofield, what's your 8? Number 8.
My number 8 would be one Isaiah Loudermilk. Sorry, I have to get that
Double
extra
H
in there. Basically, for a lot of the same reasons Jeff said. The only reason I put him 8 over Norwood is it's something that you brought up, and that is he's going to make this team because they gave a 4th-round pick to trade up to get him. And I can't say for sure that Norwood's going to be the guy to make the team, because I hope all these guys make the team. But if you look at it and say statistically, all 9 of them making the 53-man roster pick someone who's not, just because of where he was drafted, he's going to be there. That's the only reason I put Loudermilk ahead of Norwood, because I'm more confident he'll make the team. But you are exactly right. He is buried on that depth chart. He is not a guy that they need to call on this year, hopefully.
For my number 8, I'm going to go with someone no one has mentioned yet, and that is for the pick 4B, round 4B, that would be none but Buddy Johnson. I think that inside linebacker is another deep position for the Steelers. We're also forgetting about Ulysses Gilbert III. If he were somehow, some way able to stay healthy, you have to wonder, where does everyone fit? You have Devin Bush, you have Robert Spillane, you have Vince Williams, you throw Buddy Johnson, you have UG3, and all of a sudden, let's also not forget the fact that Marcus Allen played some inside linebacker. Miles Killebrew is listed as a linebacker. Antoine Brooks Jr. could be a box safety / hybrid player. Suddenly, all the people that are potentially going to be an inside linebacker is a long list. I think Buddy Johnson makes the team. I would be shocked as a 4th-round pick if he didn't, but I just don't see his importance being anything outside of special teams. That's not to, like what Brian just said about Trey Norwood, that you can still make plays on special teams. You can still have value, but in terms of playing, 11 on 11, I don't see it happening. There would have to be a ton of injuries at the position for it to happen. So I'm going to say number 8, Buddy Johnson from Texas A&M. Let's go with Brian, number 7. Who you got?
Number 7, got milk, Loudermilk, and that is the guy that I'm looking at here. I can see any position, 8, 9 with this guy. I realize that that's a crowded area for him, but you've got guys into it, and also Hayward just getting a little long in the tooth. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Loudermilk go in the route of a Carlos Davis, and in the last 4 games of the season, starting to see a little bit more action and get into the mix a little bit more. So, I mean, not really expecting him to do much this year, but as far as importance go, that defensive line, it needs to continue to be stout. And if somebody goes down, I think he needs to step in in a big way.
All right, Dave, what about your number 7?
My number 7, I have one Dan Moore Jr., because although I look for him to make this team, I look for him to be a reserve. I don't know if he'll get a helmet. More offensive linemen are getting helmets now because of the roster rules, with how many you can dress based on if you have it be an offensive lineman. But the reason that I put him here versus some of the next couple that I have, or at least the next one that I have, is because your backup offensive linemen generally don't play special teams. They might be in on extra points or whatnot, but it's not like they have to be. So that's one reason. So, and it's not like you are a rotational person where you'll get a few snaps. generally who plays your offensive line plays there the whole game. And that's why I put him back some. But the reason I put him ahead of the other two that I did is because if the Steelers have problems at tackle, where a lot of people are worried about offensive tackle, then his ability might become more important as the season goes on if the Steelers struggle at that position. So that's the reason I put him ahead of the other guys.
I actually had the same player for 7, Dan Moore Jr., and I actually didn't realize, because I'm not a college football fan, and these are not my words. This is actually from Williamson, who writes for Steelers.com, former NFL scout. I forget his first name.
Matt?
Yep, I think you're right. And he said the Texas A&M had one of the best offensive lines in college football last year, and he was the anchor at left tackle, and he said that is noteworthy. I did not know that, so I learned something there. I asked myself, can he beat out Joe Haig as the primary backup tackle? Now, a lot of people are saying he's a project. He's definitely a developmental tackle, things like that. Look, when you get to the pros, you either have it or you don't. And sometimes it takes some time. Sometimes it doesn't. But I think with some new coaching, a new scheme, who knows? I don't necessarily think, I'm not predicting that Dan Moore is going to win that job. But like you said, Dave, I could see maybe by midseason, if some injuries happen, he might be thrust into a position. So he is going to have some importance, just not going to be high on the list. All right, so we're now at number 6. We are now to number 6. Bryan, go ahead.
The middle third.
Yep.
Buddy Johnson Jr. His name might be Devadrick if you're looking to go deep into that. But so BJJ, I think the reason why I'm putting him this high is, I get what you're saying about all of those other guys at inside linebacker, but my thing about this guy is the fact that he was drafted also to be a special teams demon, and I think they're going to expect him to actually get some action right away. So I could see him doing a little bit more than a Trey Norwood in that position. So I understand we're talking 11 on 11 in some facets, but also, a big special teams play as a gunner, or he might not be a gunner, but a guy could really change a season around with a couple big special teams play, at least a game. So let's go with Buddy Johnson.
Okay. Dave, who you have number 6? Number 6.
Number 6, I have one Buddy Johnson.
Oh.
And the reason I have Buddy Johnson ahead of the other 3 that I've already listed is because I think he will see the most snaps out of any of those players in 2021. And I think every one of them will be on special teams. I think that is how they're going to start to develop and see what he can do. I shouldn't say every one of them, the majority of them. He might get on the field depending on the situation. And honestly, it would be great if he, played fantastic and did, but he doesn't have to. So this year he doesn't. They don't have to call him an inside linebacker. But if he's going to be another one of those athletic guys that can still play the run, he might show that he's important, but it doesn't have to be this year.
All right, good reasoning. I'm going to go with my number 6 is Trey Norwood. 7th round draft pick, and I'm putting him here based on the fact that with certain positions in the defensive secondary, I feel like the Steelers are literally just going to throw everything against the wall and see what sticks. And that's it. They have the slot cornerback, the dime in the sub packages. Like, who's going to fill that role? I could actually see Trey Norwood being the Cam Sutton role from 2020. And that is a player that plays only in the dime. He's going to be playing more coverage, not down in the box. And I could see him possibly having a spot there, depending on how everything goes. I don't know much about this guy. I'm not going to pretend that I do, but I'm looking at the position that he plays. I'm looking at the vacancies they have on the field, and I'm not seeing a lot of answers right now. Who knows where they're going to go with Cam Sutton? What is James Pierre going to do? Justin Lane is still there. No one knows. So in my opinion, he's got as good a chance as anyone. Mike Tomlin likes him, called him a Swiss Army knife. I know he's making plays at mandatory minicamp. We shall see, but I have him at number 6. So, Bryan, what do you want to say, Dave?
I have to say something.
Just go for it.
Out of these 4 picks so far, we all had the same players.
You're right.
Had them in different orders.
You're right. So now things get a little interesting.
Yes,
now things get a little interesting. So let's go with number 5. Bryan, who do you have?
All right, a hunka burning punt. Yes. Big Elvis.
No, you are not allowed to use that nickname.
No,
it's too
no.
terrible.
Not
My brother
terrible.
tried to use it on
And I
Scobro
used
show. I'm like, no, we
Nope.
don't use that on this
It's
show.
better than
It's
Mr.
awful.
Third and Fifth, one of the worst
Oh.
ones ever.
It's
No
really
one here
was.
no one here created that.
Well,
Actually, that was me.
I'm using it.
Was it you?
It was.
Ah,
Yeah,
blame
he did.
him.
Yeah.
Blame Dave.
Yeah.
I'm all about. Hey, you want to call him thick kick? All for it.
No.
Mine obviously
like
is
big press.
big press because he's strong. Like he's a strong dude. He squatted over 600 pounds at Georgia Tech. So that's why another reason I call him big press other than his name.
The guy's a big dude like Elvis. His name is Presley. Hunka burning punt. I'm
that's
going with it.
Horrible.
Can we mute Bryan?
Hey, you know
Go
what?
ahead, Brian. I don't
I'm
want to
making
interrupt.
my first podcast producer decree.
What is this, an executive order?
You know what? I would have loved to have gone higher with Presley Harvin, but look, the punting position is so important. We definitely need this guy to seize the job. If you did not get a chance to listen to the 20-minute soliloquy of a rant by Jeff Hartman yesterday on the curtain call, you missed podcast gold.
Was it 20 minutes? I didn't think it was that long, was it?
No, it's probably it was only about 10, but for some people it probably felt like 20. I mean,
Probably.
Jeffrey Benedict grew back his hair and lost it in that entire time. So, look, I love Harvin. I love what he brings. He is a punter. I know how important the punter situation is. It's just the other four guys ahead of him are a little more important in my mind's eye. So this guy's has to start. He is that crucial for this team, but it's still the number 5 position because I think there are more pressing needs, and that's who I went through for. Pressing needs, yes.
But I'm pumped. Okay, Dave, you're number 5.
Okay. Well, first of all, to address Brian's thing, it's not spelled the same. He's got 2 S's, which is literally the word press. It's literally the word press in his name. So, yeah, that's why that one's out the door. Anyway, I'm going to say this. The top 5, I feel, are all really close. I think it was the other 4 and then these 5. And I'm probably going to get roasted for why I put who I did here. And you can probably convince me how wrong I am, but I just did it. And I'll tell you why. But I put Pat Freiermuth as number 5. And the reason I did is because, to me, yes, he's going to be involved this year. Yes, he's going to be the guy that's going to be the number 2 tight end if he shows that he can do anything. And there might be times where he needs to be the number 1 or even becomes number 1. And that's great. But the only reason I put him here is I feel like he was Alex Highsmith of last year. The Steelers had someone at the position who was going into the last year of their contract. You use a draft pick here to know if you've got the next guy for when they're going to be here for year 2. You know, Eric Ebron, he's only under contract for 1 more year because then he's got the void years. Yep. So you want Freiermuth, if I can get the words out, now to make sure he's going to be the guy next year. And the only reason I knocked him down is because I think this year is good, but next year is really when they're going to really need him.
Okay. I actually went, and it's funny that we all went in a different direction with number 5. I actually went with Quincy Roche, 6th-round pick out of the U. And maybe this is wishful thinking, but I'm still hoping, especially after the DeCastro release, they are going to sign another pass rusher. I'm not pulling a Michael back where I'm tempting to jump off a bridge if they don't, but I'm actually saying that I don't think that anyone in their right mind can bank on this guy doing, I don't know, anything more than Anthony Chickillo did when he was with Pittsburgh. And it has nothing to do with Chickillo went to the U as well or anything like that, but he's a 6th-round pick for a reason. Would I love nothing more than to eat crow on this and him to come out and actually be a great pass rusher? Yes, I would love nothing more. But for me, Quincy Roche, he's valuable depth. You just don't want to have to rely on him. I don't want him being the number 3 pass rusher, and I don't think he will be the number 3 pass rusher in 2021. I think he might be 4 or 5, and depending on how they work their roster, like I said, wishful thinking. Hopefully they bring in someone else, but I have Quincy Roche at number 5. All right, let's go to Bryan for number 4. Go ahead.
Jeff, I like everything that you said there. And it's true. Michael Beck has been sitting outside of Kevin Colbert's house with a note. Circle yes or no. Do you like Justin Houston? Then he goes to Justin Houston's house. Do you like the Steelers? Circle yes or no. I mean, he is trying to broker this deal.
Oh, that would be awesome. If they get Justin Houston, that'd be a big get for the Steelers.
I would absolutely love it too. And I mean, I know Michael is banking on it. I think he's already ordered his Justin Houston jersey. So, and he has it right next to his JJ Watt Steelers jersey too.
Probably.
So let's look at it this way. I am going with my number 4 player. I'm going down the same road Dave did. I almost went number 5 on Pat Freiermuth. And for the exact same reasons that Dave Schofield went. He doesn't have to be anything special. He just has to be the man in waiting. He's the heir to the throne at tight end, and he's going to come up big, but they don't need him to as much as they're going to need some other guys to step in.
All right, Dave, who's your number 4?
My number 4, I will address him properly. Big Press, Presley Harvin, the punter. I have him at 4 because he needs to be the guy. He needs to win the job. He needs to be the man, which means he's going to be getting 100% of the punting, field goal, and extra point snaps. I'm telling you, we're going to be looking at him to see how well he holds the ball in the preseason. That's how important this is. Mm-hmm. But I put him there and not ahead of the other ones simply because it is punter. But when you don't have a good one, you need one. He needs to step up. Bottom line is, it's not about next year for him. It's now or never. It's get it done.
Yeah. So that's a good one. So you went with Big Press. I'm going to go with Freiermuth in number 4 for me. So similar to Bryan. For me, I have my question here, and I thought about maybe making him 3. I don't know how often Matt Canada is going to have 2 tight end sets, or if they're ever going, or if they're going to have any sets where Ebron is not on the field and Freiermuth is on the field.
That's a good question.
Will they have those type of situations for a rookie? Or will it just be Ebron's the guy if it's a single tight end and 2 tight ends, then Freiermuth gets on the field? There's a lot of questions. I have no doubt about his skill set. I think he's going to be a great addition. He can improve on his blocking, but he's a better 2-way tight end than I think he's a better 2-way tight end than Ebron. I think he's a much better 2-way tight end than Vance McDonald, because Vance McDonald still was not super athletic. He struggled catching the ball at times. Freiermuth has good hands. He has good athleticism. So Freiermuth being 4 is not a cut on him at all. It's just more about the scheme and how that's going to work out. So we go to the final 3. The final 3. And I think we have basically close to similar people remaining. We'll see who we have. Let's go with Bryan. What's up?
To no one's surprise, there is one player that both Bryan and I picked that Jeff is not yet. So that's the only difference.
Hey, just so you know, I did not screw this up and do something silly. Okay, just so you know, I didn't do that. Okay. But we'll do 3, and then we'll take a break, and we'll come back in part 2 to finish our top 2. But Bryan, go ahead. Who's your number 3?
Number 3 is going to be one Quincy Roche from not just the U, but also Temple as well. And what he did at Temple makes me really excited about the future of this guy. He is Alex Highsmith to the point where he's a heartbeat away from a starting job, possibly at this particular juncture, because there's not a Justin Houston or another outside edge rusher. And if you think that you get to a point where it's going to be Cassius Marsh starting before Q from the U, if Q is good, then he could be the next guy. He can be the man in waiting. So I think it's really important. It's a guy that gets to the quarterback just like Alex Highsmith. Alex Highsmith had 14 sacks his final year in college. The final year for Quincy Roche, well, it was jaded a little bit because of moving to the U with all those pass rushers and because of COVID. But if you look at the year before, how many times he got to the quarterback and how many times he got to the quarterback at Temple in his career, it was like 26 for all of those years. So I'm just going to say that this guy could be the next pass rusher for the Steelers. And if injury befalls this team at that position, they're going to look his way.
All right. Dave, who's your number 3?
My number 3 would be 1, Q from the U. Man, that guy's a hoot. All right, that's kind of a stretch. He also went to Temple. They're the Owls. Okay, whatever.
You can no longer say anything about the Presley thing.
I know. Come on, I'm the one who came up with Q from the U anyway. But I went with him kind of like what I think Bryan and I took a different approach than Jeff. Jeff is like he's not as important because they need to go get someone else. I'm going with what they have right now. And I am A-okay if the Steelers go out and sign another depth edge rusher piece. I am great with that but still you're going to need Q from the U to be the number 4, possibly. So I would bump if they make a signing tonight and we have to redo our list by the end of the show, I'm going to bump him down some for that very reason. But the way things set now, because the only other person's there other than undrafted guys is one Pokemon King, Cassius Marsh. Now, who, in case you did not know, whether you like these scores or not, it doesn't matter. I'm just giving you the data. When it comes to Pro Football Focus, out of every player on the Steelers team who actually had a score from 2020, meaning they had to play a snap on offense or defense, had the lowest score of anybody the Pittsburgh Steelers had at 38.9 overall. So I'm saying that's not the guy who you really want to be number 3. Although I do like him as a special teamer. He stuck his nose in there pretty good. So that's the only reason why I have Q from the U being so important. And you don't want to put all your hopes and dreams on a 6th round draft pick, even though many thought he might have gone higher. But that's just who I went with there because unfortunately, based on their depth chart, he has to be important right now because they don't have anything else.
All right, my number 3 before we take a break is Big Press. Presley Harvin III. I know a lot of people in the live chat are like, we know who Jeff's number 1 is going to be. I think they were expecting me to keep him to number 1. I wanted to, but it's not. I couldn't do it if I'm being honest. I have him 3 for a reason. I don't think people understand how important special teams are. You don't realize it until your special teams are awful. Totally. And we've seen some really bad special teams in the past. And it's like I said on the curtain call last night, Jordan Berry, or as I call him, the Weasel Boy, he is good for a shank a game. And that would be like a PGA pro shanking a ball off the tee once a round. You wouldn't be on the tour very long. It'd be like Tiger Woods in his prime, he's due for a shank and there it is right into the water. There goes a double bogey. And all of a sudden it just shouldn't happen. I've longed for the days of the Steelers finding a punter where they can flip the field. I'm talking like a Sam Koch type that's with the Baltimore Ravens. I've said this on the show last night. I've seen him punt the ball a million times because I live in Maryland. He's so good. He is so good. Right when you think you haven't pinned back, 65-yard punt with great hang time, and now you're pinned back in your own end at your own 20 or something like that. I think Presley Harvin, if he can show that he's not just a big leg kicker, he can hold the ball properly like Dave mentioned, and also have some finesse in and around the, pinning them inside the 10, then I think it'd be great. All right. We're going to take a break. We're at the midway point of the show. So if you're watching live on Facebook or on YouTube, don't go anywhere. We're not going anywhere. But if you're listening on our audio side, just hop over to part 2. We'll give you our top 2. We'll talk about undrafted free agents and have some shenanigans to finish out the show. Stay tuned. Be right back. All right, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to part 2 of the Steelers preview. I'm Jeff Hartman, your host, senior editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. Joining me as always, Dave Schofield, editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, and Bryan Anthony Davis, our podcast producer. And we have gone down from 9 to 1, the least to the most important draft picks for the 2021 season. And we are at number 2. So we've all gone from 9 to 3, and now we have our top 2. So we're going to kick this thing off. All right, Bryan, who's your number 2 in terms of importance for this season?
All right, before I get to number 2, I just want to touch on something that Jeff said when he was talking about the importance of the punter. Tony Defio and we do the Steelers Retro Show, and we've done a lot of shows lately from the 1970s, particularly 78 and 79. And my gosh, the punting was bad, but the place kicking was horrendous. And that's how that team was so great. But my gosh, Matt Barr was in 79 was missing everything left and right. Roy Jarella for all of those years was missing everything like crazy. And then you throw in the fact that you bring Bobby Walden in there and he's shanking punts left and right. So a good team, like Jeff says, needs to rely on special teams. And one of the greatest teams of all time had horrible special teams when it came to kicking. So I think that's why we're really relying on this guy, Presley Harvin III, Big Press. All right, number 2. Here we go. This has me going back and forth because these top 2 guys are really important.
And we all have the same top 2.
Yeah, we do. I was going to say, it just matter.
Well, we have to.
Yeah.
At this point.
No.
It's Kendrick Green. And the reason it's Kendrick Green is because there is a backup plan if he is not ready. And I will save the rest for number 1.
All right. Dave, who's your number 2?
My number 2, I went with only because of my history with the game of football. That was why I chose my number 1. I went with 1 first-round draft pick, Najee Harris. I went with him as number 2 because, yes, he brings a whole new dynamic. That's why he should be right up there. But the thing is, he does have to rely on teammates in order for him to have some success.
Okay. No, it's I understand it. I don't think I couldn't argue. I could make an argument for either one of these guys. I had number 2. I had Kendrick Green for a lot of the reasons that Bryan said. He's not guaranteed to have the starting job. I hope he wins the starting job. I just watched it. If you haven't, I suggest that you go to the Pittsburgh Steelers official YouTube channel, and Merrill Hodge has been doing like real short 4 minutes, 5 minutes or less breakdowns of some of the Steelers rookies. He did one on Najee Harris. He just did one on Kendrick Green. Really interesting stuff. And he talked about how he feels like he could come in and really, he could help out in one way, shape, or form as they get started in week 1. I hope that it is at center, but still just the fact that there's some indecision there. We're not sure. I have him as number 2. So now we know everyone's number 1. So Bryan, why don't you go ahead and tell us why you had Najee Harris as your number 1 player?
I mentioned the backup plan at center, and that's BJ Finney. BJ Finney actually might even be starting the season. That's not ideal. That's not what we want to happen, but that's a possibility until this guy is ready. There's nobody else to really start the season at running back. And if somebody else starts the season at running back, it is going to be a ginormous disappointment if Benny Snell is there on opening day. One, it could be the fact that Najee Harris is injured, and then you've got to worry about your prized rookie. Oh my gosh, he is hurt already. Or the fact that, all right, he's just not who we think we are yet. We don't have any indication that that's going to happen. It seems like this guy was brought in to be the man. He has to be the man. Dave said something very poignant, and that was this. He said the fact that the running back position has to rely on other players. Sure, but he has to rely on 5 players as one. And one guy is not going to break that down completely. He's not going to ruin it completely. But we saw what happened last year when you really didn't have the running game to run through holes if they were opened up. So I just find Najee Harris to be the most crucial guy here. That's why he was picked where he was. That's why the position was picked where it was. There were other directions that this team could have went in. They were looking for the home run ball. They need the home run. That's why for 2021, he's most important. He still will be able to run the ball behind BJ Finney.
All right, Dave, you had Kendrick Green as your top number 1. So why don't you go ahead and explain that?
I did, and kind of to basically disagree with everything Bryan just said, because what happened last year when the Steelers actually had some run blocking going on early in the season. I mean, one Benny Snell Jr., people forget about it. He did run for 100 yards against in week 1. He did, before the running game completely fell apart. And to me, that doesn't go to show that Benny Snell is great or whatever is, if he even wins the number 2 job. What that goes to show is that when your line and your scheme are doing good things, that position, it can be average with average people, but it does get better with others. That's why I had Najee Harris so high. But I don't know why everyone is assuming that BJ Finney is going to be the BJ Finney of 2019. The dude couldn't get on the field for the terrible Cincinnati Bengals offensive line or the not that great Seattle Seahawks offensive line. He was brought in to be a starter. I know they say there was the reasons in the pandemic and he wasn't in the best shape that he should have been because of that. But I mean, if this is his livelihood and everything, then he should have made sure he was. That was his chance. 2020 was the biggest opportunity he had of his career, other than first making the Steelers. And he didn't come through for it and didn't see a single offensive snap. And yes, I know we did a Vertex today that came out today that looked at if BJ Finney was filling in and how he did well in 2019. But you know how many clips of film we had from 2020? 0, because he couldn't get on the field. So that is why I don't have the faith there in that situation. It might have to be there. That is a huge question mark for the Steelers. And if they're not getting it done, and I'm sorry, but especially in the NFL, offensive line starts in the middle. It starts in the middle and works out, because that's the person who's got to communicate everything and that's just how it starts. And if you have that being your biggest question mark, then the guy you're handing off to behind you isn't going to be as important. And that's why I just have always had offensive line kind of ahead of everything else. I don't want to see the Steelers scheming around trying to cover for an offensive line that's not getting the job done, because it's eventually going to come back to bite them like it did last year. You've got to step up. I don't know that Kendrick Green's is definitely going to be that guy, but he's very important if he's going to be.
Well, let me ask you this question, Dave, before I go and talk about Najee Harris. How soon do you think we'll know? Is Kendrick Green at center, which he only played 4 games in college there his senior year? How soon do you think we'll know this guy's got it? Or is it, it's going to take some time? Like, how do you think we'll know that in preseason? Do you think it'll take regular season? I mean, when do you think we'll see, all right, Kendrick Green can play? Like,
you're going to get a Dave answer.
Play hard.
Play hard. Yeah, he's got to play hard. It depends how much he's got it. If he's got it and he's got it, you're going to see it the first time he goes out on the field. If he's got it pretty good, it's going to take a little bit more time. If he's you know what I'm saying? Yeah. The level of guy, when Marquise Pouncey first came out, now granted, he was a first round pick, but he still wasn't necessarily going to be the starter to begin that season. But when he came out in the preseason, you could just see, dude, that guy's got it. Now, so would it be fantastic if we could see it in the Hall of Fame game? Yeah. Just because if you don't, doesn't mean that it's still not going to get there, because like you say, he doesn't have a lot of experience playing center.
Yeah.
But and everyone's like, he's a 3rd round pick. If the Steelers were afraid, they would, all honesty, if the Steelers thought someone else was going to take Kendrick Green, who knows how high they would have drafted him. If they were afraid he was going to go at pick 25, would they have considered taking him at pick 24? I don't know. But that's what made it so wise, because he fits this team so much better for what they want to do at center than what he would have done with other teams.
That's good explanation. Good explanation. Bryan, anything to say before I go?
Yeah, I just contend that there's 4 other guys on that line. And if you have one guy that is, I mean, he's good enough to be on that team, and one guy is not going to break the line, and there's going to be other positions for Najee Harris to run in, other holes for him to run out of. So, I mean, this guy's not even, I love Kendrick Green. I think he's a great pick. I doubt he starts to start the season. And I'm telling you, I mean, so if we're looking for 2021, that's why I went with a running back. And like I said, this is just not one player. There's 5 guys on that line that are taking care of business. We saw a line in 2008 that had Justin Hartwig at center and a lot of question marks. There was no pedigree on that line. It was not a very good line, and they won the Super Bowl. They also had a rookie running back that year. He got hurt in week 4, but things aren't going to fall apart with just one player.
Go ahead, Dave. Go ahead if you want to.
No, I'm not downplaying the importance of Najee Harris to the Steelers team this year. Absolutely not.
And we're talking about number 2 and number 1 here, people. I mean, it's not like we're talking about 8 and I'm not 1. I mean, these are splitting hairs.
And I think Brian's got a good point that it might not be Kendrick Green. But what I'm saying is if it's not, I think the Steelers could really be in trouble. And you're saying it's just one spot. Go back and watch those games where J.C. Hassenauer had to start. And you mean to tell me that one start, that one player on the line didn't make a huge difference? Jeffrey Benedict's been screaming that for forever. Just having to put Hassenauer on the field put the Steelers at a huge disadvantage.
Yeah, but you didn't have the runners. Benny Snell had a good game, but the sun shined on that dog's butt in week 1. Really, because he's had 2 really sterling games for this team, but he wasn't able to do stuff in weeks 2 through 5 when they still had the scheme and the run game going. He was not good in weeks 2 through 5.
He wasn't getting the carries. It was all Connor. He got all the carries week 1 because Connor got hurt.
When he carried the ball, he did not look good. So, I mean, I get what you're saying. We're looking at the fact that Hassenauer wasn't the reason that running game wasn't doing well. It was a collection of 5, but this is actually a different lineup. So to say that it's just one guy that's going to make the difference, no, it's not. You did not have a Najee Harris. You did not have a superstar running back. James Conner is not a superstar running back. He was a good running back. He was not a superstar. There's a difference and there's a dynamic here. And hey, we have people in the live chat saying they bet I'm 97% wrong. Well, go ahead. I'll take that bet. Lay it down, boys.
Okay. My only point is, you're saying Benny Snell wasn't that great in those other ones. And his yards per attempt were low. But the difference was week 1, 19 attempts. Week 2, 3 attempts. Week 3, 7 attempts. Week 4, there was no week 4. Week 5, 7 attempts. Week 6, 6 attempts. Week 7, 2 attempts. Okay.
Who was his right tackle in that in week 1?
Exactly. That was my point.
that might make a difference too.
That's my point. Is that the guys blocking up front can make an average running back better, but the guys not doing well up front can make a great running back average.
Yeah, but the point you're missing though is that guy that was there week 1 at right tackle wasn't there weeks 2 through 5. There was a different guy in there, and they had to make a move. There was a different guy at guard as well.
I think you're proving my point.
And
they're what's important. That's what's important.
Well, no, you're proving my point, Dave. You're proving my point that you need a good runner. You're saying that one guy, BJ Finney, who might not even play, the center position is the most important to the whole thing. And it's not. One guy doesn't break the entire line.
All right. I'll have to make sure we address that a little bit more in some future Vertex. I thought when we laid out,
is there a third person on the show? I'll tell you what. You all tell me. Let me know when you are ready.
Come on, Jeff. Tell us where we both stand.
Oh, okay. So you want me to participate in the show now? All right, that's fine. I could have settled this on my own as the third person, which has a different pick. But no, you all do sound like a married couple, for crying out loud. Relax, all right? Everyone relax. Here's the thing that I think a lot of you, and Dave's kind of saying that, Dave's kind of saying the same thing. Bryan, I kind of agree with you a little bit. Here's the factor. I go back to Le'Veon Bell. The line was not always perfect with Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell was so talented that he was able to make something out of nothing on more than one occasion. I think that Najee Harris is that kind of running back, that he can make something out of nothing. Now, Dave, is it going to be perfect? Is he going to have 1,000 yards? No. Not if the offensive line's not really opening up holes. And we do know that his offensive line at Alabama was really good. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you can watch plays where things did break down in Alabama. The play that he hurdled a guy on the Notre Dame defensive back was basically a busted play. He bounces it out to the outside. He hurdles over and he's off to the races for 50-yard gain. So I think that Najee Harris is number one for me because he can create. And that's something the Steelers did not have in James Conner. James Conner was not a creator of a running back. He needed a hole. He was a one-cut downhill runner. Vision was not his forte. That's not the same with Najee Harris. Najee Harris has great vision. He has great burst, great lateral speed. The only thing he lacks is the breakaway speed. But still, for me, I have Harris. But again, we're talking about number two and number one. Number two, whatever you want. They're both really important. I mean, I don't think that we need to stress that anymore. It's very, very important. All right, we can bring this up again for another topic another time. And we were going to talk about undrafted free agents, but we went long. We need to get through trivia and all this other stuff. Okay, so let's do that first. Let's get through the trivia. Dave, you ready?
Yes.
All right, here we go.
So here we go. The trivia. I was looking up some stuff because of a discussion that I was having, and looking at what the Steelers lost in the secondary versus what they possibly have as a replacement. Now, because of this, I had to take James Pierre out of the equation because there just wasn't enough of a sample size for him to where it could really skew numbers. You kind of got to have a little bit of a sample size. But I was going through some stats that somebody else had brought up, and I was comparing three players from the Steelers secondary, and it was Cam Sutton, Mike Hilton, Steven Nelson. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a category, and this is based on 2020 only, of who you think out of these three players had the best statistics in this category: Sutton, Hilton, or Nelson. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So missed tackles. Who do you think was best at not having as many missed tackles?
So who had the most missed tackles?
No, the least missed tackles.
Okay, so the best tackler of the best,
three. The person who was least likely to miss tackle.
Okay. I'm actually going to go with Cam Sutton.
Okay. Bryan?
My first inclination is to say Mike Hilton, but I agree with Jeff. My answer is Cam Sutton.
The answer was Steven Nelson.
Oh.
Now, these are all according to Pro Football Reference. He had 4 missed tackles, and they take to figure out their percentage. They do missed tackles versus the number of tackles you had. He had a 7.7% missed tackles. Sutton was next. He only had 1 more missed tackle than what Nelson did at 5, but it ended up being 14.3% because he had fewer tackles. And Mike Hilton had 11 missed tackles last year of a 17.7%. Really? Yes. All right. Next. Yards per completion. Who do you think had the lowest yards per completion of those three?
Yards per completion. I'm going to go with Hilton.
I'm going to go with Sutton.
Yards per completion. The fewest was Mike Hilton with 9.2. Then it was Cameron Sutton with 11.3. And then Steven Nelson with 12.8. Okay. The next one. This one's tough. Who do you think had the lowest quarterback rating surrendered?
I'm going to go with Sutton.
I'm riding Sutton. He's going to do something here. He's going to be number one.
Ready? Yeah. The lowest was Mike Hilton at 60.2. Second was Sutton at 79.8. And third was Nelson at 97.0. Okay, you ready?
Banana every time.
Yes, Sutton. He is. And that's the thing. It's not always been how, and people are like, oh, there's such a big drop off with Cam Sutton. He's right there with both of these guys. He's usually better than one and not as good as the other in most of these categories. Okay.
And how many of these categories, because he didn't play as much, does it impact him as well?
Well, that's what I'm trying to make sure that it all comes in, that it's averages and stuff like that. So here's this one. How about the number of touchdowns surrendered versus the number of times that player was targeted? Obviously, if you have twice as many targets, you should give up twice as many touchdowns.
Right.
But who do you think you gave up the fewest touchdowns per target between Sutton, Hilton, and Nelson?
I'll go with Nelson.
That was my pick, Nelson.
You finally went away from him, Brian, but you shouldn't have. It was Cam Sutton. Cam Sutton gave up 1 touchdown on 56 targets, where Mike Hilton gave up 1 touchdown on 45 targets. So Cam Sutton was actually targeted more than Mike Hilton. So that's why it was fewer touchdowns per target. Now, this is a debatable number, so much so that Steven Nelson himself debated this number with me. And I understand that this was the Pro Football Reference numbers. I'll just go back. Steven Nelson was credited with giving up 7 touchdowns last year. 7 touchdowns on 98 targets. So that was way down. Okay. I've got 2 more. Completion percentage. Who gave up the fewest, not number of completions, but the completions per target? Who had the lowest completion percentage? Sutton, Hilton, or Nelson?
Sutton.
Let's go with Hilton.
It would be Steven Nelson at 50.2. Then it was Cam Sutton at 60.7 and Mike Hilton at 64.4. And these were all categories that were brought up by someone else to tell me why Cam Sutton is not the person to take over there. Yet Sutton was not last in any of these between these 3 players in any of these categories. He was not last. He was first or second. So he was better than one of those 2 players in all these. Now it's the last one. And I'm just doing this one for fun. PFR score, Pro Football Reference, overall, not PFR, PFF score. I prefer everything else. PFF score. Who do you think had the highest PFF score between Sutton, Nelson, and Hayden?
No, Hilton, not Hayden.
Hilton. Why did I say Hayden? Hilton.
I don't
Hilton.
know. I'm gonna go with Hilton just randomly. They seem to be high on him.
Okay. Bryan?
Nelson.
It's Cam Sutton.
You know what? When I edit this out, I'm just going to put Sutton in every time.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's hilarious. All right. So yeah.
I learned nothing in this game. Like I literally learned absolutely. There was no constant theme.
So no, but this is just goes to show you they all have different aspects to their game based off the 2020 numbers. Okay, so for people that are like, oh, well, Cam Sutton, the Steelers, that's who's going to have to replace 2 people. No, he was right there with them in different states. So the Steelers aren't crazy to think he can do the job. But I will tell you, Cam Sutton's PFR score was a 68.9. It had him 30th. He was like the number 30 cornerback. Then next was Nelson, close behind at 68.1. He was the 36th cornerback. Then it was actually Joe Hayden at 66.6. He was 44th. Then even at cornerback, they listed him at cornerback, was Antoine Brooks Jr. at 64.5. And then you get to Mike Hilton at 63.7, who was better than by far Lustin Jane at 48.3, which was the worst of all the corners. And in case you're wondering, none of them was anywhere close to, although it was an extremely small sample size, one James Pierre, who had an 80.5 PFR score. So the problem with Pierre is he just didn't play a lot. But when he did, man, he was doing well. So that was just to kind of show you that people that are like, oh, this guy is falling. The Steelers lost 2 players from their two starters from their secondary. They didn't lose them. They chose to move on from both of them. They could have signed Mike Hilton, and they chose Cam Sutton, and they chose to cut Steven Nelson as a cap casualty. So, and they didn't go out and sign anyone big name there either. So that goes to show you that they have the confidence in the other pieces that they had, and the data kind of shows why they might have had some confidence with them, because it's not like there's a huge drop off.
All right.
I'm sorry. No,
it's okay.
That was, yeah.
Brian, what do you have trivia?
I do not.
All righty. Okay, I will I want to do final thoughts. I wanted to talk about this. Did you all see Devin Bush's tweet?
Which one? I saw several of them.
The
TikTok.
best one was, if you a grown man and you got TikTok on your phone, stay TF. To use your brain and know what that means from around me. And I was like, yes, I love this guy. So of course I had to quote tweet it, but he also caught the attention of some other Steelers, mainly one. It was actually Chase Claypool, one of the one of the TikTokers that wrote yikes. What do you guys think about that? I love it. I love it. Hey, if Devin Bush, who's been way more vocal on social media, just about everything, is he maybe the guy that could be the next leader on the defense and on the team? He does wear 55. We know what that number does to players. He's going to be a mini Peasy or something. Did you guys like the tweet? No,
I
Bryan?
loved it. I thought it was Lambert-esque, even though Lambert didn't have Twitter, doesn't know what Twitter is. Twitter's something he probably protects in the wild. But that's him to, just get this crap away from me. I have no problem with him saying it. I love it that I thought Claypool, I loved what he did. Yikes was funny to me too. It was playful. It was like, there's not a problem. All right. There's not really a problem. He's just saying, I'm not into this. He said this last year that TikTok wasn't for him. And in fact, he mentioned that he doesn't love social media. He said that last year. And, we haven't seen much on him on social media. So I thought it was absolutely great.
So before Dave talks, he did send this out. Devin Bush sent this to Chase Claypool and Juju Smith-Schuster. Don't let these people mess y'all heads up in our relationship. Not once did I mention y'all names. If y'all feeling y'all fell inside that category, then it is what it is. We the ones winning. Where you think the money coming from, they pockets. And then all these people started chiming in too. It's really actually funny. Eric Ebron was chiming in about it. Chris Wormley says, I don't care what D. Bush says. I'll be on TikTok till the U.S. bans it. Devin Bush says, stay TF from around me. And they're using a bunch of laughing, crying emojis and stuff. Yeah. So I think it's all good fun.
I think they're just having fun with each other. That's really all they're doing.
But you know what? There's some truth to this, though.
Yeah.
Every joke like that, there's also a layer of truth to it. There's a layer of, he doesn't like this. In my opinion, you don't go on your Twitter account it's verified and has, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of followers. And you don't say that unless there's something deep down inside that was like, I don't like what happened last season. He wasn't even a part of that really. So, all right. Let's do final thoughts. I just wanted to bring that up. Bryan, go ahead. Final thoughts.
All right. Here's my final thought. I've got a role, and it's when I go to Heinz Field or if I go to another stadium. And it's simple. Anybody could come into my living room. Anybody's welcome in my living room. Just don't pee on my couch. And you've heard me say that before. All right. And so we have had, through the history of these shows, we have had great relationships with fans from other teams. Big E Broncos, one of them. We've had some guys from the Ravens as well that have come in. But we have a particular one in the live chat that, yes, I didn't boot you once. I booted you twice. And guess what? I'm going to do it again. And it's not a coward that I do it. When you come into my living room and you pee on my couch and you distract what I'm doing, you're talking to a guy that has adult ADHD. I don't have time to explain to you why you're screwing up my show. So I will. You can dislike my show all you want. Because guess what? I'm going to have more people back me up. So when you come in with your who day, that's really cool. Hey, I tell you what. Do you know math? Are you good at math? I'm good at math. 6 against 0 is pretty damn good when it comes to Lombardies.
Did you block him again?
Oh, yeah. Wait, hold on a second.
He's back. He's back.
I forgot to do that. Yeah, but actually, you know what? I put him in timeout.
Timeout only lasts for a while.
5 minutes, I think. Most of them don't come back, but he's very, oh, there he is. Now he's blocked. He's very persistent. All right, Dave, final thoughts?
Yeah, I saw Devin Bush come out with another tweet very similar to this one. And he said, if you a grown man and you at the Beehive on Friday night, stay TF from around me. That's all I have to say. That's what
it should say. That's exactly what it should say.
All right, Dave, I'm dropping it for Dave.
There you go. Hey, and by the way, Brad Jewett, my boy Brad, who's I'm going to put this up here. And he said they're having fun with it. Who cares? The people that don't like it are the same people who were born in 1980 and can't recognize fun banter. Well, hold on, Brad. They were born, and I'm talking about the other two guys on the show, well before 1980. I think Bryan was born in like the 40s, but still, I was born in 80. I was born in 83. I was born in 83. I know they're joking. Come on, Brad, give me a break. Anyways, all right. So this show is sponsored by the Beehive, located in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. Make sure you stop by and tell them that you want the bad special. They'll know what it is. All right. With that said, that's the end of this Steelers preview podcast. We are not sponsored by the Beehive. That is just a joke. We'll see you next week. Dave will not be here. He'll be on vacation. It'll be myself and Bryan. Have a great vacation.
Throw my phone. Damn you, Sapphire!
All right, Dave, send us out.
Hey.
All right. We'll see you next week. Take it easy.